Hi everyone. Let's talk about something that most of us have felt, but few of us know how to navigate. The pain of leaving someone who was never fully yours. You know what I mean. The situationships, the almosts, the it's complicated relationships where you gave more than you got, where you waited for clarity that never came, where your heart was in it but theirs wasn't, at least not all the way. Walking away from that's hard. Sometimes even harder than leaving a real relationship, because there's no breakup, no big betrayal, no obvious ending, just 1,000 small disappointments that pile up until one day you realize your heart is breaking over someone who never really chose you. So let's break this down. One of the hardest things we ever have to admit to ourselves is that the person we're holding on to might not actually be holding on to us. And I know how easy it is to justify staying. We start saying things like, well, they're just not great at expressing themselves, or they've been through a lot, or they do care, they just don't show it the way I do. And I get that, I've been there. That place where you're trying to read between the lines, looking for signs, interpreting crumbs as a full meal, because you want it to be something more. But here's the truth that changed everything for me, and I think someone here needs to hear it tonight. Love that leaves you guessing is not love that's worthy of you. It's not. Because when someone really wants you, and I mean truly wants, they don't keep you in confusion. They don't show up on Monday and disappear by Friday. They don't go hot and cold depending on their mood or who else is texting them that week. They don't leave you wondering where you stand or what you mean to them. That kind of ambiguity, that is a mystery. It's emotional inconsistency. And you can't build anything real on that. We think the guessing is part of the spark. We think the tension, the unpredictability, the highs and lows are just passion. But what they really are is emotional gambling. You pull the lever over and over, hoping that this time, maybe this time, you'll hit the jackpot, that they'll finally call, that they'll finally choose you, that they'll finally be all in. And every now and then, they throw you just enough to keep you spinning. But it's not real. It's just enough to keep you hooked. And let me say something else. When someone truly cares about you, they won't risk losing you through silence. They won't play it cool at the cost of your peace. They won't make you question your value just to preserve their comfort. Because love, real love, is clear. It doesn't mean it's always easy. It is consistent. And it feels safe. It doesn't keep you in suspense. It doesn't make you overthink every message. It doesn't make you shrink yourself to become more appealing or easier to handle. You don't have to negotiate your needs or silence your truth to keep someone who's already halfway out the door. And sometimes the hardest part, the person, it's what we make it mean when they're not choosing us. We start to wonder if we're enough, if we were just a little more patient, a little more fun, a little less needy. Maybe they'd love us the way we want to be loved. And we take on this responsibility for their behavior like it's our fault. They can't show up. But it's not. Their inconsistency isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their own limitation. And no amount of effort on your part can turn someone who is emotionally unavailable into someone who's ready to love. That's a decision they have to make for themselves, and more often than not, they're not making it. So if you find yourself constantly waiting, constantly wondering, constantly trying to decode mixed signals, I want you to stop and ask yourself something. What am I really holding on to? Because chances are, it's not a relationship. It's a hope, a fantasy, a projection of what you wish this could be, not what it actually is. And here's the truth no one tells you. Walking away from ambiguity is not giving up on love. It's choosing a better kind of love. It's saying, I don't want a part-time connection. I don't want a maybe. I don't want someone who loves me in theory but not in practice. It's drawing the line, not because you're heartless, but because you're finally honoring your heart. Because the kind of love that's right for you, that love doesn't leave you anxious. It doesn't leave you waiting for text messages or validation or clarity. That love sees you. It chooses you. It shows up for you consistently, loudly, proudly. And you don't have to earn it by proving yourself over and over again. So if you're sitting there right now holding on to someone who's only giving you pieces, I want you to know this. You don't need to wait for someone to pick you to start choosing yourself. Let go of the confusion, let go of the gray area, let go of the need to solve a puzzle that was never yours to fit. And when you do, that space you clear, that's where real love has a chance to walk in. Because the moment you stop settling for halfway love is the moment you begin to experience whole love. And trust me, you are worthy of that kind of love. Let's be honest for a second. A lot of us didn't fall in love with the person in front of us. We fell in love with the idea of who they could be. We saw potential. We saw flashes of something beautiful, something deep, something magnetic. We caught glimpses in the way they'd open up at 2 a.m. or in those rare moments where they actually looked at us like we were the only person in the room. And those glimpses, they were powerful. They made us believe there was more. That under the surface, this person was everything we've been waiting for. They just needed a little more time, a little more healing, a little more love, our love, to bring it out. And so we stayed. We stayed through the silence, through the excuses, through the half-hearted apologies, and the "I'm just not ready right now" speeches. Not because we were blind, but because we were hopeful, because we believed in what could be. And maybe even more than that, we believed that we were the person who could help them get there. But here's something we don't talk about enough. Potential is not a promise. It's a possibility. It's a maybe. And if we're not careful, we end up investing in someone's possibility at the expense of our own reality. Because the truth is, no matter how much you love someone, you cannot build a relationship on who they might become. You can't have a future with someone who's only present in theory. You can't keep pouring yourself into someone whose best self only exists in your imagination. We make excuses. We say they've had a tough past, or they're just scared, or they need space to grow. And look, maybe all of that is true. But here's the key distinction. It's not your job to wait for someone to grow into the person you need, especially when their journey is costing you your peace, your joy, and your self-worth in the meantime. You're not supposed to be someone's emotional rehab center. You're not here to prove your value by enduring pain. Love doesn't require you to suffer in silence until someone finally decides they're ready. That's not love. That's self-abandonment disguised as loyalty. You fell for what they could be if only they communicated better, if only they followed through, if only they didn't keep shutting you out. But the hard truth is, they didn't. They didn't rise, they didn't step up, they didn't meet you where you were. And deep down, you know that. You've known it for a while, but letting go of that potential feels like giving up on a dream. And that dream felt so real, even if it was never consistent. We hold on to these small moments of connection like lifelines. That one great weekend, that one vulnerable conversation, that one time they made you feel seen. But consistency is what builds a relationship, not isolated high. Love isn't proven in grand gestures followed by weeks of distance. It's shown in showing up, in effort, in emotional responsibility. And the longer we cling to potential, the more we postpone our own healing. We convince ourselves that it's noble to stay, that we're the strong ones for enduring. But there's no strength in holding on to something that's not holding you back with the same force. Real strength is in knowing when to stop romanticizing someone's future and start being honest about your present. And here's the thing, letting go doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean you didn't care. It doesn't even mean they didn't care in their own way. But their way might not be enough, and that's okay. That doesn't make you demanding. That makes you aware of what you need. It's okay to say, I love who I thought you were gonna be, but I can't keep living in the waiting room of your potential. Because while you're waiting, while you're hoping, while you're lowering your needs to meet them where they are, your potential is waiting too. Your joy, your clarity, your peace, your real relationship, they're all waiting. On the other side of that goodbye, you're scared to say. So don't stay stuck in the fantasy of what could be. Start choosing what is. And if what is isn't enough, if it's not loving, not kind, not present, not certain, then it's okay to walk away. Because the longer you stay with someone you're trying to fix or save or convince, the longer you delay the life that's actually meant for you. And I promise you, the version of you that walks away from potential, that's the version that finally gets the love that's real. Sometimes When we walk away from someone who was never fully ours, we don't just feel heartbreak, we feel regret. We start questioning everything. Did I waste my time? Was any of it even real? Did I make it all up in my head? It's one of the most painful parts of the process. You gave so much of yourself, your energy, your love, your patience. You stayed when it was hard. You showed up when they didn't. And now you're left holding a story that doesn't have the ending you wanted. It's easy to feel like all of it was pointless, like you were the only one who cared, like the investment you made in them, in the connection, in the potential was just thrown into a void. But let me say this to you. It wasn't a waste. Even if it didn't lead to the relationship you hoped for, it still taught you something. It still gave you something. You didn't lose. You learned. You grew. You evolved. And I know that sounds like something people say just to make themselves feel better. But I'm not talking about hollow silver linings. I'm talking about real, tangible growth. The kind that only comes from deep emotional experience. You found out just how deeply you're capable of loving. You discovered the lengths you'll go to for someone you care about. You saw your own capacity for empathy, forgiveness, vulnerability. That matters, that counts, that shows strength, not foolishness. And maybe you also saw the places where you lost yourself, where you shrunk to fit, where you made excuses, where you stayed silent instead of speaking your truth. That's not failure, that's awareness. And awareness is how we build stronger boundaries next time. It's how we recognize red flags earlier. It's how we stop confusing intensity with intimacy. And that kind of clarity, that only comes from experience. No book, no podcast, no inspirational quote can teach you what a real situation like that can. Because when your heart's involved, when your hopes are real, your investment is real, your pain is real, that's when your self-awareness deepens. That's when you get honest with yourself about what you want, what you deserve, and what you'll never settle for again. So no, it wasn't all for nothing. It shaped you. It strengthened you. And sometimes we don't see that right away. Sometimes all we can see is what we didn't get. But the value isn't always in what you gained from them. It's in what you gained about you. You became someone wiser, someone more discerning, someone who's learning to trust themselves again. And I know it hurts to look back at something that didn't become what you hoped, especially when you gave it your all. But don't let pain distort your memory. There were beautiful moments. There were real feelings. And just because it ended doesn't mean it was fake. The relationship might not have lasted, but the version of you that showed up in it, that was real. That was brave. And here's what's even more important. Just because they couldn't love you fully doesn't mean you loved wrong. You didn't love too much. You loved someone who didn't know how to hold what you offered. And that's a reflection of their capacity, not your worth. The real growth happens when you stop making their inability to commit mean something about your value. When you realize that even though they weren't fully yours, you were still enough, more than enough. And the most powerful moment in all of this, the real turning point, is when you decide to stop looking at the past with bitterness and start seeing it as a stepping stone, a chapter that taught you more than any fairy tale ever could. Because every heartbreak, every almost, every not quite, was shaping you into someone who knows what they want, someone who isn't afraid to walk away when it's not being reciprocated, someone who chooses themselves instead of waiting to be chosen. So maybe the story didn't go how you wanted, but that doesn't mean it wasn't worth living. Maybe the person didn't turn out to be your forever, but maybe they were just the lesson that led you to it. And that makes this part of your journey just as meaningful as the ending you're still on your way to. There's something that no one tells you when you're in it. Every time you choose to hold on to someone who's half in, who's half loving you, who's half showing up, you're unintentionally saying no to the person who would love you fully. And I know you're not trying to. I know you're not walking around thinking, let me just block the right person by staying in something. That's not quite right, but that's what happens. Because whether we like it or not, we only have so much space, emotionally, mentally, energetically. And when that space is being occupied by someone who isn't really choosing you, someone who's giving you just enough to keep you hanging on, but never enough to make you feel secure, that space isn't available for something healthy, something real, something whole. We think we're being loyal. We think we're showing strength by sticking it out, waiting for them to come around. We believe that love is about being patient, about fighting through the hard parts. And sure, real love does take effort, but not this kind. Not the kind where you're the only one fighting. Not the kind where you're trying to keep something alive while they sit back and decide whether or not you're worth the risk. That's not love. That's emotional limbo. And every day you stay in that place, you're reinforcing the message to yourself, even subconsciously, that this is the kind of love you believe you deserve, that love has to be inconsistent, that emotional crumbs are better than nothing, that longing is the same as connection. But what if I told you that love doesn't have to be this hard? What if I told you that there is someone out there who will call you back, who will make plans and follow through, who will meet your vulnerability with their own, not use it as an excuse to pull away? We forget that while we're busy investing in someone who won't commit, someone else is out there ready, actually ready to meet. That's where we are, and maybe you haven't met them yet. Maybe you can't even imagine what that kind of love would feel like, but they exist. And they're not going to find you while you're still wrapped up in convincing someone else to care. The right person doesn't need convincing. They don't need a 5-step emotional strategy to get closer to you. They just need you, available, open, unburdened by someone else's indecision. And I get it, it's hard to walk away from something when it's not all bad, when you've had those beautiful moments, when you know the version of them they could be. But those moments, if we're being honest, are not the full picture, they're fragments. And if you're constantly hoping the best version of them will come back, you're dating a memory. You're living in the highlight reel, not the reality. You don't have to hate someone to let them go. You just have to love yourself enough to stop accepting less than what you truly want, because here's the part that really matters. When you make space, something changes. You start seeing things more clearly. You reconnect with parts of yourself that you forgot existed. Your peace starts coming back. Your clarity returns. You stop performing. You stop managing their feelings and start honoring your own. And then something even more powerful happens. Your standards rise. Not in a harsh, bitter way, but in a soft, grounded, unshakable way. You stop looking for fireworks and start recognizing safety. You stop chasing potential and start choosing presence. You stop trying to prove yourself and start asking, who's showing up for me? When you hold on to someone who's only half invested, you think you're avoiding loneliness. But what you're actually doing is postponing alignment. The longer you stay in that in-between, the longer it takes for the right love to find you. And the right love, that's not going to compete with confusion. It's not going to fight for space in a heart that's still tied to the wrong person. Letting go doesn't mean you fail. It means you're clearing space. It means you're no longer keeping your life on hold for someone who can't give you the love you're capable of giving in return. And the beautiful part is, once you let go, really let go, you stop attracting people who want part of you. And you start connecting with people who are ready for all of you. You are not hard to love. You are not asking for too much. You're just finally done accepting too little. There's a moment after the goodbye, maybe not right away, maybe after the tears, the silence, the overthinking, where something shifts. It's subtle at first. You wake up one morning and for a second, your first thought isn't about them. You drive past the place that used to bring a wave of emotion, and this time it's quieter. It doesn't mean you're completely over it, but something in you is changing. And that moment, that's the beginning of reclaiming your power. Because walking away from someone who was never fully yours isn't just an act of courage, it's an act of self-respect. It's the moment you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing yourself. You start proving, explaining, trying to decode their mixed signals. And it shows you how all that effort had nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their readiness. When you start to heal, you stop needing answers from them. You stop needing closure that never comes, because now your closure comes from within. It comes from finally admitting that you were chasing connection with someone who didn't have the tools, the intention, or the emotional depth to meet you there. And yes, that's painful to accept, but it's also powerful, because once you see it clearly, you stop making it your job to carry the weight of the relationship alone. You stop romanticizing the struggle. You stop making room for people who don't make room for you. And when that happens, everything in your life starts to feel different. Your standards shift, not just in love, but in how you let people treat you in every area. Your time becomes sacred. Your energy becomes selective. You no longer chase people who are running. You no longer beg for the bare minimum and call it love. You realize that real connection doesn't make you anxious. It makes you feel calm. It makes you feel safe. It makes you feel like you can exhale. And if someone doesn't bring that into your life, you're no longer afraid to walk away, not because you're bitter, but because you've learned to value your peace over potential. And here's what I want you to know. The pain you feel right now is not permanent. It's not your forever. It's a season, a chapter, a necessary unraveling that comes before something better is built. It's the price of awakening, of no longer settling, of no longer abandoning yourself for someone else's comfort. One day you'll look back and thank yourself for leaving when it hurt, for choosing truth over fantasy, for stepping out of a love that was always asking you to be less and making space for one that invites you to be more. You'll be proud of the version of you that didn't settle, that didn't stay silent, that didn't keep hoping someone would change while your heart slowly withered. You'll be proud that you finally said, I deserve more than this. I deserve a love that doesn't leave me guessing. So don't rush the healing. Let it take the time it needs. Let yourself grieve. Let yourself be angry, be sad, be confused. That's part of the process. But know this, every day you choose yourself, you're getting closer to the life and love you actually deserve. A life where you don't have to beg to be seen. A love that doesn't ask you to shrink. You were never too much. You just gave too much to someone who couldn't receive it. And now you get to give that same love, that same depth, that same beauty to someone who's ready for all of it, including you. So if this is where you are right now, I see you, I know it hurts. But don't ever confuse pain with failure.